new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire, the no-show. Who set you back because they didn't show up on day one, or day two, or ever again. And now your product launch is delayed because you're talking to alien abduction podcasters to track them down. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can help make sure your next hire sticks. In fact, businesses who use LinkedIn are 24% less likely to reopen a role in the next 12 months. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Welcome to 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal. I am your host, Brian Slagel. I'm the CEO of Metal Blade Records. The next time you're in Las Vegas, or if you currently live in Las Vegas or the Las Vegas area, you need to visit the Metal Blade Museum. Now, not only are there artifacts from Metal Blade artists like Metallica, Slayer, Cannibal Corpse, Gwar, Lizzie Borden, there's also artifacts from bands that we had something to do with as well, like Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, Alice in Chains, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy, Alice Cooper, all sorts of stuff. So it's a really great metal museum. It's located right near the Strip in Las Vegas. Also, our retail store is also now in the museum. So you can go pick up your Metal Blade vinyl, CDs, collectibles, shirts, all sorts of cool stuff. Just go to metalblade.com/museum for all the details. And this episode is a very important one. A very big one for me as well. We're talking Black Sabbath, the song Heaven and Hell. And we get to be joined by a true living legend. Mr. Geezer Butler will join us to talk about Heaven and Hell, which is going to be awesome. We're also going to have our old friend Mark Lewis, who's, I believe this is one of his favorite tracks of all time. So it'll be fun to talk to him. And as always, we begin up north in Toronto, Canada, with Mr. Martin Popoff.
Ah, yes. Heaven and Hell, one of the greatest heavy metal songs of all time. I mean, people absolutely adore this track. In fact, Ronnie James Dio said it was the pinnacle of all of his creative achievement of all time. Rainbow Dio, I mean, he had his own band, his namesake band Dio, but no, he says Heaven and Hell is the greatest thing he ever did. He played it live forever as well. So this comes off of the album called Heaven and Hell, April 18th, 1980, right in the thick, probably the best month of the new wave of British heavy metal. It's kind of an honorary new wave of British heavy metal album, kind of a fresh start to the band with Ronnie. Interestingly enough, this is the only album with this lineup because it's got Ronnie and Bill Ward, so it's not Vinny Appice on this album. But yeah, great song, 7 minutes on the nose. It occupies the position, last song on side one. We can't picture it anywhere else. It's just absolutely perfect there. The cool thing about this song, obviously, it's got that amazing riff. But one thing that's kind of interesting about this song is that the verse happens 3 times in the song. The first time, it's just Ronnie singing over bass and drums. And, by the way, this pattern It's kind of a shuffle on the hi-hat. It's kind of a shuffle on the bass, but it's very straight-lined on the bass drum and snare drum. So first verse goes by. It's just Ronnie singing over bass and drums. Second verse goes by, and you've got Tony putting in those melancholic, sort of smeary guitar lines in the background, very melodic, almost like a second counterpoint melody. And then the third time, we get that vicious, delicious riff going with the song. So the intensity is absolutely ratcheted up. But this song is a song of dynamics. It's got loud and quiet, as we just mentioned in the verse, but it's also got this very sort of melancholic solo section where Tony is playing very bluesy and melodic, and there's a bunch of echo on there and reverb. Speaking of dynamic, this has one of the most golden moment fast parts of all time, signaled by Bill Ward doing that excellent sort of a military snare intro. And then he actually does a speedy snare roll, and then we're into the fast part where Ronnie just gives it his all. And one of the reasons Ronnie would have loved this song is that it's a song about, how life is good and bad, and you might be down, but there's also good moments as well, the downtrodden and all that kind of thing. It's oblique enough and it's abstract enough, yet it fits his worldview perfectly. It's got this great flashy title, Heaven and Hell. It's an incredible song this way. And also what happens is we never get the verse. We never get the mid-tempo speed ever again. After this fast part, we go into this kind of rush-like madrigal music at the end. This very, very quiet, pensive, kind of creepy, even quiet acoustic ending to the song. So those are kind of the cool parts that we get on here. They recorded this at Criteria in Miami. I think it's the most Martin Birch characteristic sounding albums of all time. It's very bright. It's very punchy. Not a lot of bottom end, but just a lot of exciting, visceral brightness to the guitars, to the snap of the snare, the bass drum, everything. Even Geezer's bass is, it's not exactly at Lemmy and Geddy Lee levels, but it's a very tight upper end bass. So absolute classic. The fans love this song to death. This album even competes with other Black Sabbath albums for greatest Black Sabbath album of all time with a lot of the fans, especially if you're a younger fan. And this song will give any specific song, even through the Aussie years, a good run for its money in terms of greatest songs. So absolute classic, Brian. Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell.
Always love Martin's breakdowns of the songs. It's always fun. And I forgot that some of this was recorded at Criteria Studios in Miami, which is my old stomping grounds. I recorded a bunch of records down there, including a whole lot of 6 Feet Under records. And I love that studio. Shout out to Trevor, the studio manager there, one of the best dudes in the world. And I love that place. And he was a little kid when they were recording this because his father was the studio manager back then. I asked him if he knew any stories about it, but he couldn't remember anything. So pretty cool. And also funny that Martin made it an honorary New Wave of British Heavy Metal record, too.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
You mind if we make one more stop before heading back? I need to run a Target.
100%. Let's RTT. You thinking of stuff for the dorm?
Yeah, my mom gave me some good tips on must-have essentials. We for sure need underbed storage, handheld iron for wrinkles, maybe even a mini Keurig for Mondays. Am I right?
All right, bet. Because I was already thinking about keeping my clothes looking fresh at college, so you better be sharing that.
Of course, man. Whatever I get on this run is yours too.
Twin.
But for real, let's go before they close.
Find everything you need for college at Target.
This episode is brought to you by Tidy Cats, here to level up your litter game with their new Performance Plus lineup. Your home is your happy place, your cats, VIPs. So when it comes to the litter box, excellence isn't optional. Choose from products that specialize in max power clumping, low tracking, or odor fighting so advanced, stink won't see it coming. Tidy Cats Performance Plus. Mission mighty, keep it tidy. Shop now at tidycats.com.
All right. Once again, we welcome back our good friend, the legendary producer, Mr. Mark Lewis. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm great, man. Thanks for having me.
And we get to talk, as always. I need to add it up. I don't know how many times in this podcast we've talked about Martin Birch, but I'm going to say probably close to a third of these songs are all Martin Birch.
Well, I'm happy to talk about him as usual. So
same here.
Yeah, I have so much to say about this record because, I mean, when I started high school 30 years ago, which is crazy to say for me, this was like the peak of metal not being big. We're talking about the mid 90s when I was in school. So I, at this point, was already deeply into metal. I had discovered it through my sisters and my parents. My dad was a big audiophile. And they were just like, oh, you like records? Like, we'll buy you records. My parents would go antiquing on the weekends and bring me home albums of shit that I liked. They would like find me Motorhead albums, and because there would always be a box of records in an antique store, and they would bring me home Motorhead or anything.
That's awesome.
And I remember one day I was actually out with them. I was in middle school and I found a copy of Heaven and Hell. And I was already way into Ozzy era Sabbath at this point, going sideways from Metallica. I found Heaven and Hell and it was like 75 cents. And it had like the original $4 like sticker on it it was probably like, Waxy Maxie's or some, something like an 80s store. It could have even been Tower. I still have it in my record collection. But it was like 75 cents and I brought it home and put that on the turntable and it fucking blew me away. And I started my journey into being ridiculed for preferring Dio era Sabbath over Ozzy era Sabbath in the era of Ozfest. And all of my friends being like, no, Dio's not cool, Ozzy's the best. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are fucking talking about. The Heaven and Hell's one of the best records ever made, and it's the best Sabbath record, period. That's my take. And I would get into massive arguments with my friends about it. And I still have a shirt that I bought in probably 94 or 5 that my wife now wears. And I was the only kid wearing a Heaven and Hell shirt at school. I can tell you that much.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that's now I can eat up the whole beginning of your podcast just to tell you how much that record meant to me.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's a big one for me, and I revisit it often. It's one of my most revisited classic records. It's a comfort zone for me, man. Everything about those songs, that production, is perfection to me. Just the best. Yeah,
it's so incredible. And it was a really interesting time because, obviously Ozzy left Black Sabbath and, what are they going to do? And, there were legends with Ozzy. And then all of a sudden Dio comes in.
Yeah.
And, people knew him from Rainbow, but he wasn't like a huge success with Rainbow.
Yeah.
And he comes in and they just make this incredible record. And obviously Sabbath becomes massively huge again. And I don't think anybody really expected that. And It's interesting because I look at them as like really two separate bands because the way Sabbath sounded with Dio and the way they sounded with Ozzy are two separate things. And of course they became Heaven and Hell and, that became really the band. But it's just interesting how the singer can make it sound so different. And they're one of the few bands, you could probably count them on one hand that actually were able to change singers and make it work.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing, I mean, the song, the record, everything about it, that Martin Birch, kind of that signature snare sound that he has is just the whole thing. I mean, it's almost puzzling how good it sounds for the time, how poignant the songs are, like the lyric writing, the imagery, we've talked about it before. I'm a big picture guy and the record is the big picture. And
all has to work together. But yeah, obviously Ronnie brought Martin Birch over from his time in Rainbow because Martin did all of those incredible records. So he's clearly brought him over and it worked with Sabbath. I mean, this record sounds amazing. And then Mob Rules, which I also love. In all honesty, I might love it a little bit more than Heaven and Hell. That gets me in a lot of trouble a lot of times, but they're both phenomenal records. So there really is no wrong answer.
I used to have that conversation with Pat O'Brien quite a bit. He's a big Mob Rules freak too. And I love that album every bit as much as well. I mean, Sign of the Southern Cross, and those records were kind of the big, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how old Tony was at that time, maybe 35 or something like that, mid 30s. But those records were like his coming of age. He found his sound and it never changed after that. Like the Ozzy era records, they always sounded like Tony, but the guitar tones varied quite a bit. And Heaven and Hell was like, this is Tony forever now. This is how he sounds and it's unmistakable. And it became this like kind of gain structure about his guitar sound. It was just really, really, really important to me. And Yeah, I can't say enough about that record and the structure of the song. It's a long song. It's a journey. It's unbelievable live. Man, it's like one of those things where you can only wish to write a song that good.
Exactly. Such an amazing track. And I think the other thing that's interesting about the production on this record is really this is the first time they work with a real producer. Because you look at all the Sabbath records, it was mostly them producing with engineers. I mean, yeah, Roger Bain did the first couple of records, but I mean, those records were recorded in like 3 or 4 days. So they've never really had a proper producer until now. And you can kind of feel that, even though it's the same 3 guys in the band at this point, aside from the singer, obviously, they sounded much different, more mature, more balanced, I guess. I mean, look, all those Sabbath records are absolute classics, but I just love the way this record sounds. And again, it's to the credit of Mr. Martin Birch.
Have you ever heard the rumor? Some people say that Vinny played the drums on this and not Bill Ward. And
no, I heard that, but if you listen to it, I don't think that that's the case. And I don't think neither Geezer or Tony ever mentioned that in the book. And those two play very, very different styles. So I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to say, I don't necessarily think it's true. But yeah, man, it's just the clarity of it, the weight of it. It's so heavy. Yeah, I wish I could sit and pick Martin's brain, rest in peace, because he did those records in such a way that were those drums are so rich and roomy, whereas it's just, most of us don't do that anymore because the guitar sounds eat up so much sonic real estate. It's really hard to get a drum sound that open and roomy and really do that thing. And it's just a brilliant way to make a record. And it's just so listenable, but so powerful. It's just kind of untouched, man.
Yeah, and I like the fact, the interesting thing about Martin Birch too, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, because again, we've talked about him a million times, but it's mostly him. He didn't have an engineer and have really worked with any big time engineers. Most of the engineers listed on the records are, I'm assuming, just second engineers or, guys that were just, get him cups of coffee or whatever he needed. So he's doing this all pretty much on his own.
Right.
But the other thing that's amazing about certainly records like this have the Martin Birch sound, but every record he does sounds different. He lets the band kind of put their sound in there, so it doesn't sound like, just flip a switch and it's a Martin Birch production, which to me is the brilliant thing, because like as I've said a million times, like most of my favorite records of all time he produced, but they all have different sounds and different qualities about them that make them great.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There is always kind of an unmistakable thing he does with the snare on those records, and it's just like, it's so good.
That's probably the one thing that's the most consistent is the drum sound overall.
Yeah.
Most of the drums sound pretty similar. I'm sure it's the way he mic'd it. I don't know that he's using the same kit a lot of the times or not, because sometimes they'll do that. You never know what you're using in the studio. It's a lot different from, we talked about that before in the podcast, where what bands record use in the studio to record is usually a lot different than what they use live.
Oh, totally.
So I could see him maybe having a drum, a certain drum kit that he liked, but that's always hard to do because all these drummers like their own kits the way they like them, and it's kind of difficult for them to play on different kits.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting, he's never really had like a home studio, in terms of he didn't go to one studio all the time. Like this record was recorded in a different studio, and then a lot of the other ones, and he always seems to like they're using different studios almost all the time, which is another thing that always blew me away about him, is like, how do you get these brilliant sounds no matter where you are, no matter what studio you're in? Because, as a producer, like going to different studios, you've got to acclimate yourself to how it sounds and how things sound when you're mixing it and all these different things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's brilliant at that, man. It's fascinating. I wish there was more documentation about him, but it's funny. Like Jason Sukoff did a Heaven and Hell cover on one of the Death Angel records. I can't remember what I was working on, because our rooms used to be right next to each other. But I was so jealous because he was not the Sabbath fan that I am. I'm like, I should be fucking doing this song. But it came out great. He did a great job, and Mark sings that song so great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man, I just a monumental record for me. And it was funny as I got older, Dio really got his due. Not that he didn't, but he became much cooler, even for the Ozzy fans, I guess. And it just made me snicker at all my friends that would give me shit back then. I'm like, Look who's talking now, And of course, and Ozzy's brilliant. I don't mean to compare him. I love those records just as much.
Well, I never got to see Ozzy and Sabbath in the original form. It wasn't until they reformed that I got to see them. But I saw Sabbath with Dio quite a few times. And in fact, on the Heaven and Hell record, I think I saw them 2 or 3 times because they played a big festival in LA, California World Music Festival at the Coliseum. I'll never forget that.
Wow.
And then they did I think that was the Black and Blue tour too. Or there might have been some, but there was a Black and Blue as Black Sabbath and Blister Cult tour.
Oh, wow.
And then there's another time I saw them, maybe San Diego. So I saw them 3 times. And I didn't notice any, the fans were all there and they were all, these arenas and stadiums were all packed.
Right.
And I didn't really notice a lot of fans upset. I'm sure there's some people up front that might have been screaming, "Oh, see," but yeah. But for the most part, I think that record was so huge, and it might have even been a different audience than was into Sabbath beforehand. I'm not sure.
Yeah, sure.
But they were great, obviously, incredible.
Yeah, I'm so sad. I for some reason didn't go to that show when it was in Orlando, and then Dio was gone 2 years later. Biggest mistake of shows I've ever made.
Oh, you never got to see him live?
Saw Dio a few times in small clubs.
Oh, okay,
but
not with the
not with Tony and crew. Gotcha. No, but I did get to see him sing Heaven and Hell. I saw him singing at the 930 Club actually in DC in the 90s.
Oh, nice!
It was awesome. Yngwie opened. It was quite a show.
Wow, that's a very interesting show. But yeah, it's cool. What else can you say? That I just slobbering all over Martin Birch all the time. But it's like every record he does literally sounds perfect. I can't think of a record as like, man, if the bass was louder, or if this was louder, it's like it's all perfect.
Yeah, he's got it going on.
Gotcha. All right, man. Well, thanks so much for doing this, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, Brian Slagel here, founder of Metal Blade Records. I spent my whole entire life trying to make metal history and make metal better and promote metal as much as I can. And now there's a brand new way for you to test your metal knowledge and relive those iconic moments. It's called Metal Mondays, the official metal trivia game from Metal Blade and Pantheon Media, and it's free to play right now. Every Monday, a new game drops. From Slayer, Supremacy to Death, Metal 101, 80s, Metal Blade Classics, and tons more. You'll battle it out on the leaderboards, win killer prizes, and even score some exclusive Metal Blade merch. So if you think you know your riffs, your legends, and your deep cuts, prove it. Download, hit replay on the App Store or Google Play, or head to metalbladerecords.com/Metal Mondays and start playing today. Because in metal, there's no off days. Only Metal Mondays. Metal Mondays. Play loud, play true, and play to win.
United connects you to more of the world than any U.S. airline, and United for Business can get your company where you need to go. Whether you're growing a business or managing travel for thousands, they offer solutions to fit your needs. Track expenses, create reports, and manage traveler perks. Plus, employees earn Mileage Plus miles while your company saves on travel. Get started with no minimum spend or flight requirements. Visit business.united.com/podcast.
Visible puts the ultimate wireless hack in the palm of your hand. With unlimited 5G wireless data and hotspot designed to keep you connected, powered by Verizon's 5G network. And no contract holding you back. Plans start at $25 a month, or get the premium Visible Plus Pro plan and save $10 on your first month when you use promo code HACK. Make the switch at Visible.com. Terms apply. See Visible.com for details.
Ouch. This knee is killing me, but I can't stop training. The marathon is in 2 weeks.
Let's get on ZocDoc and find a doctor to take a look at that for you.
Okay.
Here's a review. Dr. Craddock really takes his time.
No, I don't have time.
What about Dr. Charles? His patients say he can help find a quick fix, and he's in network.
Great, now we're talking. Book it.
Booked. 1 mile down, 19 to go.
Bring it on.
You've got options. Download the ZocDoc app today.
This man needs no introduction. I'll give him one anyway. You know him from his fantastic book, Into the Void. He's a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, and of course from Black Sabbath, Mr. Geezer, and Heaven and Hell, Mr. Geezer Butler. How are you?
I'm very fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and honored and happy for doing this. So I'm getting to the end of this podcast, and I felt very important we had to include Ronnie Dio, Black Sabbath song. We've talked a lot about Black Sabbath on this podcast, obviously, but we haven't talked Dio yet, so I had to get a Dio song in there. Of course, Heaven and Hell being the most iconic one. When did you guys first become aware of Ronnie?
Tony Iommi had met him at a party out in Beverly Hills, and I think Ronnie had just left Rainbow, and they were sort of talking about doing an album together. And this is, when the original Sabbath was still together. And then when we started writing what would become the Heaven and Hell album, Ozzy just really didn't seem to be into it. We'd written about 5 songs, and Ozzy just didn't want to sing on any of them. So we realised, it was time to part with Ozzy. And Tony says, well, I've met this great singer called Ronnie James Dio. He was with Rainbow. Let's give him a try. So we gave him a try, and it was incredible straight off. Because we had these songs written, not the ideas of the songs written with no vocals on them. And we started playing, and he just joined in jamming, and he got it straight away, and that was it.
Yeah, he's such an amazing singer. I when I first heard the news, because I was obviously a massive fan of Rainbow, and I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be really great. And you can tell from the beginning of the record, it just feels like the chemistry is all there. But it's such a different, it really is almost a different band in a way because of the way Dio sounds. When you guys were doing it, was it originally always going to be a Black Sabbath record, or were you thinking maybe we call it something else?
We didn't really know. Once we finished the album, Warner Brothers said we're only going to finance, because we weren't exactly rolling in money at the time. And Warner Brothers says for us to continue on Warner Brothers, it's got to be a Black Sabbath album. So, we went along with it anyway.
Yeah, it worked out, obviously. I always like to ask these questions. When people are in the studio making what would become these iconic records, did you have a feeling in the studio that you guys were making something really special here?
I did, especially because I took time out to deal with some personal stuff. I had to go back to England, and because we were writing it in Beverly Hills at a house there. And after about the 3rd song that we'd done, I had to leave, and I came back. And just before I left, Tony had come up with the riff for Heaven and Hell, but it was just the riff. By the time I came back, they'd written the whole thing. And I was going, this is incredible. I loved it. And so I knew then that it was going to be a special album.
Yeah, so the song in particular has that iconic bass riff in there. Was that something that you wrote or Tony wrote? How did that all come together?
No, I think Jeff Nichols wrote it. He was the keyboard player. When I came back, the bass that I played on the actual album wasn't too far off what Jeff Nichols had done. So give him a lot of credit for it.
I always wondered about that because it's so bass riffs. I mean, so many bass riffs in Black Sabbath that you did are iconic, but I love that one, and it kind of does drive the song a bit, which is pretty amazing. The other thing about this record is you guys got to work with my all-time favorite producer, who I unfortunately never got to meet, Martin Birch. What was that like?
He was fantastic. Without him, it would never have happened, that album. He was just really a great producer. He'd worked with Ronnie before, and he didn't push anything. He just make a few suggestions here and there. And he had a lot of patience, because it took me about 3 weeks to get the bass sound on that album. He was great. He was really good to bounce ideas off, and really good bloke to get along with as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've read countless stories of him with Maiden, and I've talked to Ronnie about it, and tried to learn just from it. So from what I gather, he's pretty much the engineer, producer, everybody. I don't think his second engineers, I think, are just guys there to maybe get him coffee. Is that correct? Absolutely, yeah. Martin, he didn't need anybody else. It was just Martin. I mean, Tony's a good producer anyway, so between them, they both got Tony knew what sort of sound the album should have, and Martin just completely got how to do it. He was great to work with. He was really encouraging, unlike a lot of other producers I could mention. But he was great. Well, like I said, I think of my top 20 all-time records, he probably produced 10 or 15 of them. So and they all sound different. They all have their own unique sound to them. So he clearly is able to capture the sound of the band and not push his particular sound on there. All his signature is there.
Well, he had a lot of patience. Instead of like telling us what to do, he'd be like, "This is what I want," and trying to get the best out of the stuff that we were explaining to him, what we wanted it to sound like and stuff.
Did you guys feel a lot of pressure making this record? Because obviously this is going to be the first record without Ozzy, and there's a new singer, which you haven't gone through before. Was there any pressure, or was it just like, let's just make a record and see what happens?
No, we just, we knew it wasn't going to work with Ozzy, and we weren't in a position to just disband and give up. That album had to be probably the most important album since our first album, because we had to reestablish ourselves all over again. And to try and replace Ozzy is like, you can't replace Ozzy.
No.
And so it had to come from a totally different angle. And the good thing for me was that Ronnie could write his own lyrics, which was like a blessing for me, because I was, forced to do all the lyrics on most of the albums. And I just wanted to concentrate on my bass playing at that point, and it just worked out really well. And once we'd finished the album, we knew it was a great album, and Warner Brothers loved it from the first time they heard it. When we went on tour, it was a bit strange at first. People were expecting to see Ozzy, and here comes Ronnie comes out on stage, and it was hard going at first, but then like halfway through each set, the crowd would get it and they'd love it.
Yeah, I never got to see Ozzy with Sabbath and the original thing. So the first time I saw Black Sabbath was on the Heaven and Hell tour with Ronnie. And again, I was always a big fan. I loved the way he did the old Sabbath stuff. It was his take on it, but I thought it was all brilliant. I loved that stuff. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, he did. He took it under his own under his wing and did it his way.
So I was going to ask you about the lyrics, because I know you obviously wrote the lyrics beforehand. So instead of being in competition with him writing, like, I want to write more stuff. No, I want to write more stuff. You were more like, I'm done with the lyrics. You do it. And I'll not deal with that anymore.
I was just so relieved, because the final album with Ozzy in the 70s, the Never Say Die album, it was like pulling teeth trying to get Ozzy to sing the lyrics. I used to write lyrics for him, and he wouldn't even read them. He just totally dismissed them before he'd even read them. And on that final album, that's what happened. Bill Ward had to sing one of the songs, because Ozzy just left. He just left. He wasn't interested in singing on them. One of the songs had to become instrumental because Ozzy refused to sing on it. So it was around that time we either broke up or, had to do something drastic and get a different singer in, and that's what happened.
Clearly it worked very well. So what was it like working with Ronnie? Because that must have been a completely different experience than working with Ozzy.
It was great, because Ozzy couldn't play any instruments, but Ronnie, to be able to express like some of the choruses and things, he'd come out with a guitar and play it to Tony. Sort of, this is how I see the chorus, and he'd play the chords, so we all knew, what to do.
It was crazy too that Heaven and Hell was, I think it's 6.5 minutes long, and it became this massive radio hit. Kind of back then, FM radio was a little bit different, but in the US, you didn't hear so long songs like that, and that became this massive radio. Did that surprise you guys at all?
The whole thing surprised us, because we believed in it, but getting everybody else to believe in it is another thing. You can think you've written the greatest song on earth, and then like nobody else will think that way. But he's lucky that the people liked it as much as we did. Yeah, it was accepted.
Yeah, it's
people were just like going, "Well, Sabbath are finished. Let's hear what this terrible album's going to be like," and then getting completely surprised.
Yeah, I was not in the minority, but the opposite of that. Because like I said, I was such a big Dio fan, and obviously a massive Black Sabbath fan as well. So I was excited to hear what you guys did, and clearly it was pretty amazing. The other thing about Ronnie, and I know him pretty well, we did a lot of work with him, and one of the nicest people I've ever met is certainly in the music business. But he could remember everybody's name. Like, that always blows me away.
Oh, yeah. I'm terrible. I can't remember anybody's name.
Me too.
I have trouble remembering my own name sometimes. And we'd do a gig and there'd be about 40 people coming backstage afterward, and he'd know everybody's name.
Yeah.
It was incredible. He had such an incredible memory for that kind of stuff. And he'd talk to them for hours and hours and hours. And we used to, we'd finish the gig, everybody was tired, we wanted to get back on the bus or back to the hotel, and there would be Ronnie still talking away to, all these fans and things.
Yeah, he was amazing. We had Wendy on the podcast talking about Ronnie, and that's what I asked her. I said, how did he remember like people's names and stories? And he said he actually like kind of studied on that and worked on it. And he obviously had to have a natural ability. I know a few people that can do that, but that just blows my mind because I'm like you, in one ear out the other. I can't remember anything.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Real quick, I wanted to talk real briefly about Mob Rules because I also absolutely love that song. And Sign of the Southern Cross is maybe my favorite of the Dio era Sabbath stuff. What was your take on that song and remembrance about it?
The Mob Rules, we were on tour in England at the time, and we'd just done Hammersmith Odeon in London, and we got this offer of doing a soundtrack for some film. So on our day off, we went into John Lennon's house, who had a studio there, and John Lennon had just died or been murdered. And we went into his house, and it had this incredible atmosphere in the studio. And from scratch, we just came out with Mob Rules. It was almost like we jammed it. I mean, it's like by magic. It was like this new song came together in like 10 minutes or something. So we'd written that on tour. That went on the soundtrack of this film, a kind of heavy metal film, I think it was called. And then when we started doing the Mob Rules album, we redid it for the album version.
It's crazy how so many amazing, iconic songs come together really fast.
It's like Paranoid, that was the last minute thing that we put on the Paranoid album. The producer said, we need 3 or 4 minute song to do the album, otherwise it's not going to be classed as an album. So Tony just started coming out with a Paranoid riff. I quickly wrote the lyrics down, and Ozzy just sang them as he sang the lyrics as he read them off the paper.
And it's become one of the most iconic songs of all time. So you never know.
Yeah, and that's the way Mob Rules came about. It was meant to happen kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. That's usually the best art comes when it's just really fast and it just comes together naturally. So I love to hear that.
It's great when you don't have the time to piss about with it and like ruin it and overdo it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that happens a lot now with people's home studios and all this other nonsense, but that's a whole other conversation. One thing I did want to ask you, so you've been vegetarian since basically you're a teenager and vegan for a long time too. How is it in England way back then? How could you be a vegetarian at that point? It had to have been pretty difficult.
It was always difficult on the road. I used to practically survive on potatoes. That was about it. I used to bring my own vegan margarine to put on the spuds. And that's why I was so thin back then. I used to have like two baked potatoes every day and some cereal for breakfast with soya milk.
Yeah, it's got to be hard because we have a couple of vegetarian bands, and especially in Europe, like they would just live on cheese pizzas, and it's rough to do. But even at home that long ago, where there couldn't have been a whole lot of options other than bread and cheese and a few vegetables.
Yeah, at home was great because you cook your own stuff, and Indian curries were massive in England. So
that's right.
Vegetable curries. A lot of the Indian place restaurants always had a vegetarian or a vegan side menu, so you could always get Indian stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I forget when I first went to England, that's about all I ate was Indian food for the first few years. But yeah, good stuff. Well, I don't want to keep you. I know you got to get to the World Cup, but I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, man. Take care.
Cheers. Take care.
All right, that'll do it. That was a great one. A real honor for me to be able to talk to Geezer Butler. Well, thankfully, most of it was at halftime, but he's a huge soccer fan. So for him to take the time, really, really appreciate him for doing that. Great interview. Also, Mark Lewis, Mr. Martin Popoff, Lizzie Borden for our theme song, and Mr. Christian Blatt, our producer who makes everything work on this thing. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys next episode.
100!
Hey, this is Eric Hutchinson. I've joined the Pantheon podcast family, and I hope you'll come check out my new podcast, Songversations with Eric Hutchinson. Each week, we find out what music matters most to the people who define our cultures. I interview famous guests like actors, musicians, comedians, politicians, and everyone in between. We listen to music together, and we talk about the soundtrack of our lives. It's funny, insightful, revealing, and it's a great way to discover new music. So come check me out, Songversations with Eric Hutchinson, wherever you get your podcasts.